Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Agent Boost podcast. Got our friend Rich Post here. Maybe if you noticed, Dan's gone again this week. This is kind of the era where we start traveling quite a bit. So Dan's actually in Washington, D.C. this week with some of our friends with WellCare. And then next week we're going to be at Medicarians. Maybe we'll get a couple good podcast episodes from down in Vegas. Maybe we'll kind of transfer some of this gear down there and get some good interviews down there. But we're going to be making a commitment to, regardless of who's here, we're going to be putting these episodes out every week. So, Rich, my friend, I hit you up this morning and I was like, wait, have you not had you on the podcast? Yeah, no, we totally planned this out weeks in advance, gave you lots of thought. But Rich Post is, what's your official title with us these days?
As of today, it's Agent Success Manager.
Okay.
Right. I kind of view it more like Agent Relationship Manager, but the same thing.
Yeah, and essentially, Rich is like an internal team lead for us. And, you know, as we've kind of gone through a lot of the evolution over the past couple of years with external agencies, kind of like a GA, MGA, SGA, FMO type progression, we've kind of built an internal model. So we at Agent Boost have something similar where you start off as like what we call a team lead, and you have essentially a salary in your team, and you can personally sell and produce as well, up to like a team manager, a regional. And so we've built an internal sales structure. But the reason why we've done that is, one, every agent that works with us has some sort of direct contact with agent success manager, a team leader, a direct point of contact that they can go to that has experience in the industry. So having said all that, we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the podcast, but I wanted you to kind of, agent highlight, kind of talk about how you found your way into the exciting world of health insurance sales, kind of talk a little bit about your, how you stumbled your way in.
Yeah, kind of like the origin story.
Yeah, the
right?
Rich Post origin story.
Well, first off, I'll try to fill in for Dan here. I'm not, I'll try to be a good host here or whatever. But so kind of got into the business late 2011. I was, doing, we'll just transport back to the dark ages. I had was kind of doing everything right that they told you to do. I just got off active duty, and so I was
what branch of military?
Army,
okay.
Right? So I get back home to Utah. This is 2007. Right, so I'm going to school, right, working a full-time job. I'm a personal trainer on the side, and I got 2 young kids, and a family that I'm trying to grow up, and we're just barely surviving. So I found myself working at like a sporting goods gun store kind of thing, and this, very easy for me to talk to people in public, and I was, just, hey, what do you do? What do you do? One day a guy comes in, I sell him a bunch of guns. His name's Max Nichols. He's actually one of our agency owners as well. And, hey, man, what do you do? And he's like, I help people with Medicare. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Give me a job.
But you were attracted to him, what he does, not him, but you were attracted to what he does because of, obviously he had money to buy multiple guns at a time, right?
Yeah. It was a handful of AK-47s kind of thing. And I was just, this is, 2011, 2012. So this is like peak zombie apocalypse, And so I'm just like, well, hey man, you should just randomly, I'm like, you should just buy this many guns and this many bullets for your family, and that'll help you in the zombie apocalypse. And he was like, let's do it. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, that was a joke. But, hey, man, what do you do?
It reminds me of the scene in Wolf of Wall Street when Jonah Hill goes to Leonardo DiCaprio and he's like, you show me a check right now for $70,000 and I'll quit my job right now and work for you.
Similar story, actually. Yeah. Funny as you. So, so kind of go through that progression. Like, so he tells me what he does, Medicare. I'm like, great. I don't even know what that means. Give me a job. Fast forward a couple months, and I'm literally looking at a commission check and then my $9 an hour monthly statement, and they're literally the same amount of money. And I was like, I got to quit my job. Like I went home that day and I just told my wife, I was like, hey, I quit. She's like, what? And I'm like, well, hey, like these checks are the same. This is 160 hours of, sweat and labor and sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And this is not 160 hours. I just got to do this once a month.
Yep.
And that was kind of my mindset, and just kind of hit the ground running from there, So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that story. We've talked about it many times. Max, shout out to Max if you ever hear this, but he's one of the grandfathers, one of the OGs of Medicare insurance sales, especially here in Utah. He was one of the, I would say the founding fathers of Medicare here in Utah, and still happy to have him as an agency owner with us. But we got into the business roughly in the same era. So prior to that, talk to me about your military experience, how you kind of found your way into the military. Because, I think there's a lot of vets that find their way into the insurance industry for whatever reason. Maybe we can talk about that too, but talk about your service history.
Okay. Well, again, going back to the dark ages, kind of fast forward to the mid 90s, my family moved here from Alaska. And so, found myself in Layton, Utah, from Alaska of all places. So kind of just a weird kind of, again, origin story. And so, grew up in the kind of the Davis County area, causing trouble, running around Ogden, not doing things that, on the up and up, I'd say. And so, but it got to a point in my,
there's not a lot of bad areas in Utah that you would say, but I guess that would maybe be one of the, the bad areas of Utah, if you could classify.
More it's not like bad neighborhoods, maybe just bad kids running around, maybe some bad neighborhoods, but yeah,
found your way. You found
my way.
You found your way.
I got to this point in the early 2000s. Just kind of tired of that. I felt like there was something missing. From my life. Just tired of running around with the same people, kind of getting into those same patterns. And I ended up meeting my wife, kind of this same time frame. And I kind of remember telling her, I was like, "Hey, I'm joining the military. You're either coming with me or you're not." Right. And so kind of, I remember one day I got laid off from a job I was working. And so I was just like, I gotta go make this change. I walked up to the recruiting station up there in Roy, Utah. They had everybody, Coast Guard, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army. And I remember walking up and I was like, this is an inside joke, I don't do boats. So that eliminated a couple branches pretty quickly. Yeah. And so, my parents were Air Force, so I went into the Air Force recruiter's office. I was like, hey, I need to leave tomorrow, right? I need to get out of here. I want my life to kind of start. And they're like, oh, 6, 8, 9 months. And I was like, that's not fast enough. And so walked right out of their office, walked right into the Army recruiter's office, was like, same thing. Just, I need to leave tomorrow. And they were jumping over their chairs for me, like, oh, come over here. And this is, think about it, this is post 9/11. So this is July of 2002.
Yeah, a year later.
Yeah. Yep. So this is and so, had to get some waivers. They didn't let me just walk right in, but that was the kind of, I knew I needed a change in my life. I had kind of shed kind of that lifestyle and that friend or peer group that was kind of holding me back a little bit. And so, just, me and my wife got married pretty quickly, then boom, it was, basic training and all that. So
yeah, I think you're selling yourself short a little bit. And that's one of the things that I really love about you and, admire about you is to go from where you were and kind of the trajectory of your life to just wake up one day and be like, hey, I'm done with this. I'm done with this lifestyle. I'm done with these decisions and this trajectory, and found Jesus, so to say, found the military.
Yeah. And
we're like, I'm choosing a different path for me in my life. And so that's one thing that I really love and respect about you, man. Yeah. Just really appreciate it. And don't tell you enough, but so kind of just to that point, Rich is a perfect example of just somebody who has used not just this industry, but other opportunities to literally pull himself up from the bootstraps and provide a really good life. Great family man, great father. And so just the complete caliber of dude that we love having in the organization. So that wasn't really the purpose of this, but I just wanted to give you give you the love, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, of course I'm leaving out. There's a lot of heartache and turmoil in those early, I tell people I had a wild, adolescence, childhood from
I'm like, wait, in Utah?
Yeah, from 12 to 20. It was pretty just off the rails, man. And, at that 19, 20, 20, I was just, that's kind of before a year or two before the military thing, I kind of started shedding people. I basically became a monk kind of in my mind. I didn't party for over a year. I literally would watch I have an older daughter from, when I had a kid when I was 15, right? And so I literally, that summer of when I was 19, 20, I just would go hang out with her and watch her and her little sisters and kind of just, again, distance myself. And then was looking for the out, right? Because I saw, again, speaking of like the turmoil and the craziness of my life, one of my best friends died. He was kind of like my older brother. And so it was like, that was like the catalyst, I think, to kind of just like our whole, he was the one guy that kind of held everybody together. So once he passed, it was kind of like we were aimless. And so for me, that was the catalyst. Like I was saying, I was like, I got to get out of here, because I was doing the same things that led, to his downfall. And I was like, saw the writing on the wall. Like if I continue, and I remember, this is, speaking of Jesus, I don't know how religious we're going to get, but like, this is like first time I've ever prayed, first time I ever read the Bible. And I remember going like, hey, if this is real, right? Like, I need a better life. I need to be with someone who, is worth the time to be with. And, that's my wife. And, we're going on 22 years. Like, we literally have been together since the day we met. So,
Well, that's awesome, man. So I just kind of appreciate you giving a little bit of context. I think that's really, interesting and appealing for people to hear your story and background. And then, so you ended up in the Army, and you ended up actually being deployed multiple times, correct?
Yeah, pretty quickly. Like, so, I tell the story like this, so
this was the Iraq War stuff. This is
on,
like right all in it. Yep.
Yeah. So me and Noel we meet in March. We're married in August. I ship off to basic training in October, and so my MOS in the military, there's no like, it's 17 weeks straight, the basic stuff plus your job. And so I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri from October 1st, 2nd, to like February 1st when I graduated. So me and my new bride, we ship off to our first duty station, Hinesville, Georgia, middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. And, I meet my, all the, my first sergeant, so the guy who's in charge of me, and all the people, and I'm like, I remember standing in his office like, hey, first sergeant, can I go home and get like my clothes and my car? And he's like, no, son, you're going to Iraq. And I was like, so this is me at 23 years old, 22 years old. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to Iraq. And not kidding, man. 2 days later, paperwork in hand, you're getting on a plane. I remember me and my wife were still living in a hotel. Wow. And I remember showing her those that paperwork, and she was like, "What's this?" I'm like, "That's orders for Iraq, baby." And she was just like, gut punch.
Wait, like, this is actually possible.
This is actually possible. Yeah, like, so that was like February 5th time frame, and then by March 12th, I was on a plane. And so that's my first deployment. And so the thing about active duty is it's 24/7, and so we get home from that first deployment. A little bit of downtime, and then it's back into training, ramping up for the next one. And so then deployed again all of 2005 for the most part. And I remember halfway through that deployment, they're like, don't get comfortable, we're coming back. And I was like, no, I'm not. So decided to get out active duty, because I just, at that point, me and my wife have been married 4 years. I've been gone most of it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, trying times. I think that time away and that tribulation in our relationship drew us close together. Right?
Yeah.
Like it was just us. So we didn't have family to lean on, when we're in our tiny apartment in Hinesville, Georgia. It was just us. So if we got into disagreements, we had to figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
And so it was good times.
So you're still in the military. You're reservist, correct? How do you think being military and your career there has helped you in your insurance career? How did that kind of translate over?
It's easy to talk to people, right? So one thing about the military is it brings people from all over, right? And so you get used to different viewpoints, religions, and whatnot, and so it makes it just easy to talk. I've never had a problem talking to people anyway. So, and then I was trying to like, how do I equate like being in the military to sales? And it's like, well, you're constantly kind of selling yourself to your superiors. You're trying to improve. Right. And so I think that it transfers pretty easily into just work ethic in general. Right. Sometimes, I mean, I'm not always on, but where I think it's helped me the most now is transitioning to this newest role, as the agent success manager. I know how to manage people for the most part. I know what it is to like lead a team, it's and not have it be so salesy. Right. So more of like, hey, I'm going to develop you as a person, and the sales will come. Yep. That's kind of my angle. Yeah,
and you've done a great job. You've got a few team members, and in my opinion, you're really making a difference. There's one guy, in particular, Our guy Joannick, shout out to Joannick if we've never shouted him out on the podcast. Joannick is Northern Florida, where he's cranking away. I think the industry in this game's changing his life.
Well, and that's just a cool story because, like, for me, like, Medicare insurance sales has been everything, right? To change the trajectory, to change my stars, to where food stamps, Section 8 housing, broke, to I can go on vacation now, and then what I like about it is kind of that pay it forward. So, like, I've basically taken Joannick under my wing and just kind of sold the vision to him, and it's cool to see, like, I remember calling him after AEP as he's about to get a check,
pretty big check,
a bag, right? Yeah. And I remember I love that moment because I was able to kind of just say, hey man, like, you're about to get a check, I'm gonna give you some counsel here. Don't burn it. Don't burn it down. But, like, how much do you think you're going to get, and go through that. And then, like, when I told him the number, that pause, and you could just see, like, getting a little emotional now about it. Just like you could just feel it through the phone. And it's like, and even when I talk to him this day, he's like, you guys have changed my life.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I love about this.
Yeah. He did it. You did it. They put in the work, but that's what, when Dan and I talk about this industry, a lot of times it's like, and we deal with all of these millions of headaches and things like that, and go, when is it worth it, right? And those are the kind of stories when it's worth it, because legitimately you get to a point where you care as much about impact and legacy as you do about money, right? Yeah. You hear people talk about that all the time, and I'm not to that point yet where I don't want to, more money's still not a motivator for sure. But, you do have that impact. And it's one of the things I've always loved about this industry, because we have all sorts of agents and leaders around this organization that I feel like we've made that impact on, and that I get that reciprocation of that, like, appreciation from. And it really does motivate me as much as any money does, and it's really cool. Like, in my mind, I envision it. I was like, you build this bonfire, and then you're taking that fire out and spreading it to somebody else, and seeing someone else take that torch and take that, get on fire themselves and build that for themselves, and be able to take that out to their lives and their communities. It's super cool. And, it's honestly what we're trying to do here is just get as many people developed and through the door to be able to change their life with this opportunity as possible. So you've done a great job with that.
I appreciate that.
And here's to many more people like that, right?
Yeah, I got there's some other people kind of in the wings. There's, I tell everybody can't be Joannick, right? Mm-hmm. But, whatever your level is, as long as you're hitting those goals and, targets or whatever it is, you've kind of envisioned your future to be, I'll help you do that.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, and we've even talked about that this morning, is there's a little bit of, the industry's hard right now. It's hard to get going. It's hard to build up a book of business. It's expensive. Life's expensive right now. Inflation's destroyed everybody over the past few years. Just cost of goods, leads, business is super expensive. Meanwhile, it's hard to get this structure going in the business and start building up a book of business. But when people do that and they start getting into year 2 and 3, and you start seeing people legitimately making hundreds of thousands of dollars, or like, very significant amounts of money, it's really cool to see people. We have agents right now building $1 million, multi-million-dollar houses that have been able to facilitate that through these careers and really level up their lives. And that's something that's very, very powerful, and it's super rewarding to see,
Well, yeah, I mean, you look around, I've seen, like, the other industries, like, you can take a look at the real estate industry right now. They got that settlement that just came down. And so it's like, what are they going to do? And I'm like, well, hey, like, I actually ran into a real estate buddy of mine. I was like, maybe now it's time for you to do Medicare, man, or ACA or life. Just, I think it has a stronger staying power, right? It's more certain than what the industry he's in. So that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before on this podcast, and Dan and I, everyone's gone through hard times to sacrifice into this industry, and the amount of people and agents nowadays that are not able or who are unwilling to make those sacrifices and to grind it out is becoming increasingly rare. Like, one of my favorite phrases is like the uncommon among the uncommon, right? And finding those agents, those people who have that gear, our friend Omar right here is going through it right now, grinding out to build something for themselves and going through it that that skill set and that grit and determination is a disappearing commodity in the world, right? And a lot of that is strategic in that, you know, people want you to be not sovereign, right? They want you to not be able to be financially free, to be able to have influence over these industries and things like that. People want you to be part of a larger, you know, you got to take the orders on down and not be able to be, you know, independent. And so those agents, those people out there who are willing to go through that grind, and if you're out there and you're in that mode right now and you're in that grind, I promise you, keep going. It's worth it for you on the other end. And the amount of people, you know, the path gets narrower the further you go along, but when you get there, it's really going to pay off big time for you.
Yeah. I mean, I tell agents all the time, if you could just, you know, 3 to 5 years, right? If you can just put your head down, you know, 3 to 5 years, and then you'll look up and you'll be like, dang, like what a wonderful life. Yep. Yeah. I had to sacrifice to this all work. And I'll steal a metaphor from Max. You know, I'm always grateful for the opportunity he gave me. And so I like to share this story. You know, I remember him telling me one time, he's like, you know, Rich, you know, Medicare's like this. I'm out there and I found my plot of land. I've tilled all the trees, moved all the rocks, and I planted my avocado farm. And now I just walk out in my orchard and I bump a tree and an avocado falls in my hand. I'm like, yeah. Right. And so like, I get those moments now where I'm just like waiting for my phone will just ring and be like, hey, my sister's friend's uncle's cousin's brother just turned 65. Can you sign him up? Yes, I can.
Well, and now, I mean, for Max, he actually has his literal farm.
True.
With his literal tractors and toys and lives that life metaphorically and in reality, you know, so it's, you know, definitely paid off for him. Another guy that's had tremendous success in this business. Yeah. So yeah, man, I mean, let's kind of talk about, you know, how you ended up here. You kind of were with Max as an independent agent, and then, you know, we've had a great relationship. You've been one of our external or like independent agents. And then, you know, we had some opportunities for internal positions here in leadership. What made you want to kind of come on board and, you know, kind of make that transition onto let's say the corporate side of things as well?
Yeah. So kind of going through like, you know, so I was the independent agent, you know, from 2012 on, you know, out there doing the community events, calling bingo and whatnot. And then as, you know, fast forward to 2018, 2019, I'm kind of like, okay, what's the next evolution of being an agent? And it's okay. It's got to be agency owner, right? And so kind of started that process, you know, 2018, 2019. And then like for most people, right, COVID hit, you know, 2020. And so, you know, I had just dropped, you know, $5-6 grand, you know, branding, website. And, you know, I was like, okay, looking at, you know, how do I get into recruiting
people? Post-insurance group.
Yeah, post-insurance group. And then, you know,
pig for
yeah, feed the pig. Someone was making fun of it. I was like, I don't know, I should make my logo a pig and got to feed it. But yeah, so, you know, COVID hit and I was like, okay, well, you know, kind of the world shut down. You know, I was like, great, I just spent all this money and I don't know what to do. Right. And so I kind of went off and did something else for a little bit. And then, you know, like we mentioned earlier, I'm still
entrepreneurial.
Some entrepreneurial stuff, made some decent money. And, you know, I'm still in the military. I actually just hit in July will be 22 years, if I'm doing the math. Yeah. So
thank you for your service again.
And so, hey, I got voluntold to deploy again, and it had been my third deployment. So I had a huge break in deployments, and the benefit to this one is it was logistics versus like a combat deployment. And so I was like, okay, it can't be that bad. And it really was decent. It was a decent deployment. And so like, as I was getting ready to transition home, I'm like, okay, well, like, you know, what
you got injured on that deployment?
I did. I did. Yeah. We won't go into that. It's too soon.
Non-combat injury.
Tore a muscle, pumping some iron in my 40s. And funny story, I text my wife from the clinic in Qatar after I tore my pec.
Like I'm in the military hospital.
I'm like, hey, I'm in the hospital. No. Don't freak out. Literally. Literally, don't freak out is what I sent to her. And, you know, of course, right, what does your wife do? Freak out, you know? And, you know, so what are you doing? What are you trying to prove to those people? You're in your 40s. I'm like, whoa, calm down, lady. Like, you know,
you were proven. I'll admit. Yeah, you were throwing down.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, it was 405 pounds.
There we go.
Okay,
yeah.
So
tip of the hat. Yes. I like to, you know, I've bragged at times in my day, but I never got there. That's for sure.
So, but yeah. So, you know, as I was transitioning home, I was kind of in this limbo. I didn't know, like, okay, do I run the brokerage again? And I've always kind of, before I deployed, I'd actually had applied for a gig at Humana to be their veteran rep, like to do that kind of thing. Cause I was like, hey, I'm in that community anyway. I've always been like, I've been an agent, right? So I understand like that aspect. What does it look like behind the curtain? It's always been, I'm just curious. And so, had a conversation with Dan, I was like, hey man, what are, either I'm going to be an agent, or I got to find something else. Right. And so I was like, hey Dan, like, what are you guys doing? How are agents making money? Cause like I hadn't made a lot of like gains from like 2018 to that point.
Yeah. It was that, a lot of people are transitioning to virtual, and then of course COVID hit, and leads costs kind of exploded at that point. And a lot of field agents were kind of trying to find their way.
Yeah. So he told me what you guys had going on, like at the WeWork and the new office. And I was like, cool. I hadn't, even though I'd been affiliated with Agent Boost, I just haven't been like in contact as much as I should have been. But I heard the opportunity to come in and be like a remote agent. I was like, I kind of like that. If agents are able to do it, I'll try my hand. I'll definitely try it out. And I had some success doing it. I wasn't saying I was the best, but I already had a book of business, so I wasn't as hungry as I used to be. But I told Dan, I was like, I want to do this, but at some point, I would like, if there's ever a position open to kind of come internal, I'd be interested in that as well, right? And so put my head down, went to work, the opportunity presented itself. And once it was offered to me, it was just a no-brainer to kind of just step over to this side.
Yeah. So now just to that point, we kind of opened the podcast with, we have an internal team thing for us. Dan and I, we kind of see some of the difficulties that agencies have these days with costs and getting going and marketing and branding. And we'll see what happens supposedly tomorrow. We'll see how this podcast ages. We may be doing an emergency press conference thing Friday. But the CMS final rule for 2025 is supposed to drop, and how that affects us. But, we really saw how difficult it was for a lot of these agencies to grow in this current environment. And, there's been this almost dynamic evolve where whoever was doing it before and had these contract levels could kind of make it, but to progress through those GA, MGA, it's really difficult these days. And if you're any of these agency owners out there, you probably know what we're talking about, but you got to be able to recruit, you got to be able to grow, you got to be able to reinvest capital back into your business. And, my brother's not here, but, I'll shower praise on him. He's been way more willing than anybody else in this industry to reinvest back into the business over the past 10 years and grow a business. And that's what I see a lot of agency owners not being able or willing to do, is they start making a bunch of money and it's like, that's their money, right? And he always viewed it as like, I'll take what I need and I'll reinvest everything else and grow and be able to build back into the business. And to be, I don't know of really any other entity out there that's kind of grown to our size and level as a contemporary during our same time frame. And so it is very, very difficult. And so we built this internal structure as well, where it's like, hey, we'll start you off at like this team lead with like a base plus salary, get paid a percentage of your team's revenue. You can personally produce as well. And then when you've hit, you've recruited this many team members and you guys are producing this many level apps as a team, we'll bump you up. And it's basically this internal GA, MGA, SGA on up, where it's unlimited compensation and you can build the business within the business, right? It's a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, and I love that part of it, because it's like, I don't have to be the creative.
Yeah.
I don't have to go out there and reinvent the wheel. I can just kind of plug in, still put in the effort, right? Still I'm putting the work, and I'm completely bought into the brand, right? I don't have to be the whole guy who does everything. Just to mention kind of like Dan, I actually ran into him in the hall the other day and I was like, hey man, just hit me as I was getting off the elevator. Like, you must see something different or just have a different perspective, because when most agency owners are contracting and kind of hiding away, not only did you, new office here in Utah, but the Tampa location, a brick and mortar in Mesquite. So like, and now, I don't know how many employees we have, officially, but,
120. So I don't even know. I can't even tell you, but growing them out.
It's weird because like people will say hi to me in the elevator. Hey, Rich, how are you? And I'm like, I look at them like, who are you?
Shout out to some people. I'm like seeing them at the bathroom or whatever. I'm like, they're like, do you work here? I'm like, yes. Do you? I'm like, nice to meet you. Yeah. And it's cool. It's a surreal thing sometimes.
Yeah, but I've loved seeing the growth. I just remember this is the word that's been kicked around the office a lot this past couple of days. Is I remember the sandwich shop.
Yeah,
and I remember I was down there getting kits, and Dan was like, "Hey, help me unload this truck." I remember unloading kits to the office, and then so it's good to see the growth.
So Dan's first office, our first office, the GA, was actually, we called it the closet. It was the basement of a State Farm. It was a basement office of a State Farm PNC agent with a little office smaller than this. That was called the closet. That was the first year. Yeah. And then we moved to the sandwich shop. And the reason why it was literally above a very busy, very good sandwich shop. And you had to walk up the stairs right next to the entrance. So it felt like you were in the sandwich shop while you walked up to the office, and it smelled, back in the days when I could still smell, it smelled like sandwiches all the time. Like
just
so you're up there working, and we had a shared conference room and stuff like that, and it was literally a sandwich shop. Yep. And then we moved to one that I called the bar, the hairstyle. There was next to a hairstylist place and an upholsterer, kind of in a flex business industrial space. It was kind of nice, and then our last office, and now here we're in a 27,000 square foot facility in Silicon Slopes in a nice, beautiful building. And to your point, we are growing, and it's because we're executing, right? Like, in the last 12 months, we signed on a big space in Tampa. We're doing this here, and a lot of other people are kind of paralyzed and don't really know how to grow. But because of guys like you and forward thinking and our awesome team members, we are growing and we are executing, and we want to keep doing more. It's kind of that, Warren Buffett analogy, where be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy type.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Type analogy. And, so as long as we keep executing, I think there's more runway ahead, right? Like, we're competitive and we love this business. And like we just talked about, that's the rocket fuel that keeps us going, or the success stories, the guys like you and the Joannics out there and all our other agents that, fuel it. And we had a really great day yesterday with our grand opening, and seeing all of our carrier partners and people that have been with us for 10, 12 years, kind of seeing the obvious noticeable growth and progress. It's really cool. It's really rewarding. So, my friend, what advice do you have out there for, you work with a lot of new agents that are trying to get going in the industry. What are some of the struggles that you see with them all the time?
Well, I think a lot of times, the benefit of, getting into this industry kind of like before everything was digital, now everything is online, all the enrollment. I remember paper and all that, right? Like, you really had to build relationships, with the customer or whatever, the beneficiary, right? And so you really got a lot of face-to-face time. That's not as, you still can, but, the industry has shifted to more of a remote model, right? And so I think that's one of the things I like to impart to people is just, be personable even on the phone, right? A lot of agents, think of this as more of like a transactional enroll. Like I'm an enroller. No, you should have the mindset when you're helping people, right? Yeah. You're not necessarily a salesman, you're a helpsman, right? And then your goal, mission, whatever you want to call it, is you want to leave that person better off than you found them. And if they're on the plan that's best for them, right, if we can use the word best, then leave them where they are. You got to be willing to walk away, right? Don't be so desperate to get the sell. Right, so that's kind of like the selling part of things. Like, again, you're not an enroller. And the other part is, like, if you just do what's right for people, right, the money will follow, right? And a lot of times, another one that I actually going to steal this from you is a lot of agents think they need to know everything before they do anything. And it's like, Rich, can I get training? Yeah. How many hours do you have? And I think a lot of times agents mistake training for skill. Right. And it's like, no, the experience, right? Like the experiences are what are going to give you the skill. Understanding, complex situations are what's going to help you. Not, 4 hours training on a
Learn
CRM.
by doing, yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of agents get stuck in this fear mode where this like, well, I don't know anything, so I can't do anything. Can't do anything. And I'm like, you and I have similar stories when it comes to getting into Medicare. I remember doing a presentation and never done one before, and it was like, what do I do? And it was like, well, here's a stack of books, read from the book.
Yep.
You know, there's nothing's online. They like, you know, you're literally in front of 20-something people at a freaking, you know, restaurant, you know, trying to win them over, and you've never done this before.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we see, you know, with agents all the time, because we bring on about 100 agents a month right now, maybe somewhere, maybe a little bit less than that, a little bit more depending on the month. And one of the things that we see is with the training thing, this creative avoidance, right? Where a lot of agents will want to do anything they possibly can before they actually go do some sort of sales work, right? Where it's like, well, I need to know every possible scenario. And one, maybe it's an innate skill, like it's a soft skill that we have, but I have an overabundance of confidence in basically anything, right? Like in my mind, I could go be the CEO of SpaceX, and I'm gonna fake it till I make, you know, I'm gonna be like, what do we got to do to build these rockets? You know, I don't know anything about rockets, but I know that I'm going to be able to figure it out, you know, and I know that I'm going to be able to deploy my leadership and whatever else it is, and be able to, you know, kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, fake it till you make it, and learn it, and learn on the job training. And one of the things when people are like training, we have never had the abundance of education and training and access to information that we have right now. I'm like, for hell's sake, you can be on a call with somebody or at an appointment and you can Google the answer to anything you need. Back in our day, you know, when we got into it, I'd say all the time, you know what, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. Let me find you that. Let me find you the answer to that. And I coach agents on that all the time, whether you're in an in-home appointment or whether you're on a call with somebody, just be like, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. No one's ever asked me that before. And then you find out that that's an actually really basic thing and a routine thing that you should know. Yeah. We've had agents before where they like copied and pasted all their answers on AHIP and certs and stuff. And then they're like ready to sell, asking me all these questions. And I'm like, well, it turns out you actually do need to know something to do this business, right?
Yeah. And that's what I tell agents. It's like, it's not like training, as long as you have a grasp of the rules, which, you know, AHIP, you know, Medicare and you, like those are the resources I read religiously when because I need to understand. It's not how do I submit an app that's going to catch you up. It's when you don't know, you know, how much is the Part B deductible? What do I do if I have VA? What is TRICARE? It's those things. If you can sound knowledgeable when you're talking, that's going to help you, right? People will forgive you. You know, I think you overheard me trying to sell this MedSup last year, and I almost talked the person out of it because I couldn't figure out how to do it, you know, and I kept apologizing, like, hey, like, sorry, you know, my computer's all messed up, and and really I'm faking it. I'm rusty. Yeah. And, you know, but yeah, like, people will forgive you. It's like, hey, my system's a little jacked up right now, you know, but at least as your knowledge is there. And they don't know you don't know. If they ask you a question, Google is you're right there on Google. You know?
I mean, you're building a rapport, you're building trust, right? People would way rather you say, hey, I actually don't know that. Let me find out and give you the right answer instead of BS them, right? Yeah. So the other thing with new agents, and when we hire a new group internally for our W-2 employees, Dan or I, it's kind of like the thing we'll do now where we'll walk into the new group and I'll tell them that day, I'm like, hey, I want you to go home and I want you to look in the mirror with some self-awareness. And self-awareness is a very powerful, important thing. And I want you to ask yourself if you're a salesperson, because no matter what you're doing in this industry, you have to have some sort of sales skills, and you will do some sort of sales work. You're either prospecting appointments, you're going out and meeting people and networking, you're calling people over the phone. Something you're doing is going to be sales work. And there's a lot of people that unknowingly get into this industry and they don't understand that they have to do sales work. You know, they expect somehow that they're going to be an agent where people come to them or find them without them having to actually go out and be proactive and put themselves out there and take some rejection. And we'll tell them, I want you to go home and look in the mirror and be like, tomorrow I'm ready to go. Am I going to go call these people, or am I going to go get out of my car and go in and introduce myself to this local, you know, senior center manager or whatever it is that you're going to do? And if the answer is no, that's fine, but just this ain't for you.
Yeah.
You know, this industry is not for you. And so that's a thing that, but for those of you that are willing to overcome that fear and you are willing to put in that effort, I promise you, like these things we talked about earlier, there's great things on the other side of it.
Well, you're going to have, like, I stress this to all my agents, you're going to have days where this sucks. I've had them, right? There's literally been days I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be an agent anymore. I'm going to go look for a job. I've been there. I literally have done that, you know? And so, like, but it's getting past those. How many, you know, what's that saying? How many no's till you get a yes? You know, the hard days, man, there's so many of those days. I'm sure you've experienced them too, where you're just like, is this for me?
Yeah. Perspective and context really help for me when I've ever been in that mindset. You know, sometimes I'm going, you know, I've done it all. I've met with, you know, 1,000 people in home, done events, pitched at the Golden Corral to big groups of people, done it all. And, you know, I've done phone sales, and there's been times where, you know, you get down and you're like, man, this really sucks. But then a lot of times I think, hey, I'm a highly paid professional. I'm making great money. I'm legitimately helping people with their health and wealth. And I'm selling something that I don't even, especially on the Medicare side, on ACA and these other products, but on Medicare, I'm not even asking for any financial, there's no financial transaction there. What other industry can I do this? And I start thinking about all these other ways and other things that people do to make money. And that gratitude exercise kind of quickly reframes things for me. Yeah. And I go, hey, it's not that bad to be sitting in here making calls from my office or whatever, or driving around in my nice car, going and visiting people and, you know, getting told no every once in a while. There's a lot of other worse things that I could be doing to make a buck. And I really think that perspective and mindset helps a lot of times, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you could be, you know, like it always can be worse. You
could be getting shot at in the military, right?
I always flash back to like, man, it could be 125 degrees, full kit, middle of, you know, someplace you don't want to be.
Taking mortars.
Yeah, like, you know, so I'm just going to like, worse. I can deal with this, you know. You know, and I also tell agents, like, you know, like, put yourself out there. What's the worst that can happen? Like, they can't kill you.
Yeah.
They can't kill you, so just take the no, move on to the next one, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are people who they've got, you know, we laugh at it all the time. They got licensed, they paid money, they took this test, they studied for weeks, they went through AHIP. They did all these certifications for all these carriers. They put all this time and effort and money into it. And then the time comes for them to actually do it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm paralyzed and I'm too scared to do this.
You want me to use words?
Yeah. You want me to talk to this person?
Yeah.
I'm not in for that.
I thought they wanted to enroll right away. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you haven't even said your name yet, you know?
Yep. Well, Rich, just for anybody out there, you know, if you ever are looking for a home and you know, you want to work with a guy like Rich or Rich specifically, let us know. We can get you on his team, get you mentored with him. But I think we have a really cool, unique structure for agents out there. I see how much time, effort, love, and care that Rich puts into his team, as well as his counterparts here that we'll introduce at other times. But you know, if you're out there looking for a home, love to have you. And if Rich, you know, if you've been impressed with this guy as we have, let us know. We can get you placed with him.
Cool.
So, how we doing on time, Omar? We go too long? All right. Hey guys, we'll catch y'all. We may have an emergency press conference tomorrow, depending on how things land with CMS. If not, we'll be in Medicarians next week. But the episode should keep rolling. Appreciate you. Okay.